Courage or crazy? Courage to get through life and a whole lot of crazy to survive life. Trapper, Teresa, and Cheryl, your ambassadors of Courage or Crazy. Sharing life with you, uncensored and unfiltered. Real life, real people, real courage, real crazy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Courage or Crazy. Today we're going to do part 2 of our conversation with Gina. For those of you who haven't listened to part 1, well, you probably should, because I'm going to give you just enough information so that you're going to have to listen to it. But Gina is the mom of a beautiful baby boy who was born with Spina Bifida. And we talked about bringing him into the world on May 13th and what it was like leading up to him entering the world and joining us. So we're going to start by, when we left off in part 1, we had, Gina had actually held him for the first time. And of course, those of you who listened to the first podcast, you know what we are talking about when we said he had a button and he had some flippers. So listen to podcast part 1 to find out what all that is about. And now we're going to talk about the next step of his journey, because it was not just one day. So Gina, tell us what happened. You were in Alaska at the time, and he was due to have surgery. The doctor decided not to do surgery there. And then you had gotten to hold him for the first time, and now let's just lead into what was his journey and his path moving forward for the next few days or months.
So a neurosurgeon declined the surgery, and we were told we needed to find our own resources to find a new surgeon. And that was not something we had prepared for, nothing we'd researched. We knew that we would need a lot of help finding a new surgeon. I don't know who suggested it, but they suggested reaching out to my insurance and asking. I wasn't the one who did it. I don't know who did. I want to believe it was somebody here back at the hospital that helped coordinate, because they kept telling us well, you're from Texas, reach out there and see. I don't know what we're looking for. I don't know what kind of neurosurgeon I need. Is it just any neurosurgeon? Right. I just had a baby that is not what I expected, and I'm taking this relatively well, but I cannot move and do these things. Before I know it, we've been in contact with Phoenix Children's Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. Our insurance at the time was through Banner Health. And they had a home off. I mean, they pay the fees and everything associated if you use their services. Gotcha. So everything's at a reduced rate, as is with most hospital systems. And they started making these arrangements, and the key was he had to stay in the NICU. If he got on a commercial airline and flew to Arizona, then he would be moved to pediatrics. Hmm. So they came up with this idea. Again, I don't know who's making all these decisions at this point anymore.
But thank God somebody was.
Life for the next 10 days, life is happening, and I am just an active player in this scenario. People are telling me what to do. I am doing them, and not much else. I am trying to care for this baby and learn how to be a mom from that perspective, and also keep my sanity. I'm barely hanging on there emotionally. And so they tell us that in 24 hours, they're going to life flight us from Anchorage to Phoenix, Arizona. I work in HR. I know insurance this much, and I was like, we are never going to be able to afford this. Right. But you don't care, though. You don't care. You're just like, it is what it is, and we're gonna move forward with this. So my husband is there for that one day that Alejandro was born, and then he has to fly out. I mean, he has to run home, pick up the kids, and meet me in Arizona. And it's not that simple. It's, a 5.5 hour drive. It's getting them ready, like gathering all their stuff. That night, though, he got to spend one night with me there in the hospital with the baby, and we got to have him, the couplets have him in the room with us, and we're just in awe of this child we've made and how quiet he is and how just serene.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, we were like, this is an old soul we're dealing with. And that evening, they come to us and they say, you need to learn how to calf. We don't know his prognosis. We don't have any real way of knowing at this point. He may be able to release urine. He may not. He's not old enough for us to know anything about that. I felt helpless in a way I'd never felt before. I was like, the first thing I said is, I can't do this. I cannot hurt this child. And they're like, you won't hurt them. So my husband has to calm me down. And he's like, he just takes my hand and he's like, let's go see baby. Let's go visit him in the NICU. So we go to the NICU and we get there and they look at me. Everything is they look at me, and Teresa can attest to this. Everything that happens from here on out, they always look at me first. And I just don't want to be that person. Right. I just want to be alone. I want to deal with this. And I feel that every time someone asks me something to make a decision, I'm incapable of it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They hand this stuff over to me, and they say, it's a catheter, it's the alcohol wipes, it's all this stuff and gloves. And I'm just standing there with it in my hand, like, what do you want me to do with this? They said, we're going to show you how to do it. I said, no, I can't do this. And my husband goes, all right, show me, and then I'll show her.
Right.
And he goes, then I'll show you. I said, okay, that sounds good. That's doable. Somebody I know, I feel comfortable. You would never hurt him. And if you can do it with your giant bear paw hands, then I can do it with my little bitty hands. And so the nurse or whomever shows him, it's actually, we have somebody from urology there, and they're showing us what to do, and they're walking him through the process, and it's easy peasy. And he's like, Gina, you can do this. I just did it.
Right.
Now you do it. And all I can think in my head is, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. But he's talking to me in a calm tone, and I do the thing, and sure enough, it works. And they're like, okay, so when you go on this life flight, your husband's not allowed to go with you. We need that, and they're explaining why they're talking to me only. And I said, but I can't hear you all when you're talking to me right now. I'm so much emotion, I can't hear you.
Right.
And so they keep doing this relay of conversation, and he calmly explains things to me. So what I'm learning is that my son and I are leaving in less than 24 hours. We are taking one of those small planes, those jets from Anchorage to Arizona, and we have to travel via ambulance from the hospital to the airport, to some airport in Washington, where they're going to stop, reload, feed us, do whatever, and then we're going to continue on to our destination, where we will get in another ambulance and then be delivered to the NICU. This is all in the purpose of keeping him in the NICU. Wow.
Yeah, that's a
so
lot.
We do this.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot, and it happened. And the day of the travel, my doctor comes in. This is the doctor. She did my C-section. She's very proud of herself, by the way. She's like, good work to herself. And then she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I can't breathe. I said, I can't breathe. She's like, you're fine. You're fine. This is a lot. She gave me like some antidepressant or something, or I think she gave me Ativan, honestly. I think she gave me Ativan and was like, it's okay. You're not pumping yet. You can take this. I don't know. She let me take it. And it helped. And she's like, come check up. We'll have to do a checkup, etc. We fast forward to this crazy, like, fast rush. My husband had left. We ran to pick up the kids in Fairbanks. We have cell phones, but these aren't like iPhones yet.
Right. Right.
These are like Motorola's.
Mm-hmm. Right. And cost by the second.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I have no idea where he's at. I don't know if he got home safely. It's not a safe trip. There's always risks involved. But I'm also like on my way out. I am being moved and put on a plane and being escorted and jumping in this ambulance, jumping out of this ambulance. And I get on the plane, the first one, and they look at me and they said, your son is our patient, but you are not supposed to be flying. So unofficially, you're our patient also.
Ah.
So we're going to be doing your vitals every hour.
Oh,
and I was like, okay.
Let me guess, your blood pressure was a little high.
Oh, yeah. I was in a state, and I ended up in the ER later.
Yes.
With Teresa. Because I was dehydrated.
Uh-huh.
So they get us there. They get us to... It seemed like forever, and this life flight crew, they just bonded with him. They loved him. They didn't want to hand him over when we got to Phoenix Children's. They were very possessive, and they were like, kind of like when they had to do a handoff to the nurses, they were like, are you the right people? And are you going to take care of our little guy?
Aww.
You know, so it was just so sweet. It was so sweet of them. And they just took really good care of us. And I wish, you don't remember who and what, but I always wish I could be like, thank you so much for that. That meant so much.
Right.
We get there. I'm exhausted. They take my child. And the surgeon comes out, Dr. Moss, and he's like talking at me about my son. And I was like, is there any chance? And he's like, no. See, look at this. And he has him like on his side, and he puts his hand on his rib cage, and Alejandro like wiggles, and he goes, oh, look at that. He's ticklish. And he does it again and makes him like wiggle. And he's like, yeah. He goes, but notice his legs don't move.
Aww.
I was like, yeah.
Aww.
Thank you for pointing out the obvious. He's like, what I'm going to do is just repair this so that he can function and there'll be no future damage. But what has already happened in week 1, week 2, and there's no coming back from this. And he did say it much nicer than first doctor, but it was still kind of harsh to hear.
Right.
Because it's that validation of, this is it. This surgery isn't going to make him walk.
Right.
But he was like, other than that, he goes, he's fine. And I was like, well, that made me feel better.
That's
it's
good.
fine.
That's good. And how many, I know he had surgery number 1 there, probably shortly thereafter. How many has he had?
Oh, wow. I didn't prep that question.
Threw one at you, didn't I?
Yeah, it's been quite a few. He's had, so he had the initial repair. He's had bilateral ankle tendon release twice. So that's, if you count each side. That would be 4 surgeries there. He's had his big toes operated on twice. I'm losing count of them.
Yeah, so that's like 6, 7, 8, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had his big spinal fusion surgery in 2019, and then the rods broke that December, and he had to go in for spinal repair in January of 2020, and that's where they did the wound vac, which is them going in and operating and closing over and over again, and they did that 5 times.
Oh my gosh.
So, just under 20.
And then 2 knee surgeries.
Yeah. Oh, crazy.
Maybe 20.
So, some of the things that come to my mind, I mean, I had my oldest child, who I'm sure Teresa probably prefaced with the fact that he passed away, but before he passed away, he was diagnosed at 7 years old of being a diabetic. And I mean, it's nothing in comparison. It's just the fact that as parents, that whole feeling of, what did I do wrong? How can I fix this? Why is this happening to me? I mean, we could sit here for probably an hour and go through all of those emotions that happens. So how do you keep your attitude well, your son's attitude well, your family's attitude well? How does depression not come in? How does anger and grief and all that other stuff? How is it emotionally? You probably take turns in your family bouncing from one emotion to another, I imagine.
Gina takes them all.
So how is that emotionally? Just like for the whole family, and it's now been from 2007 and we're in 2023 now. So it's been years, and I know you've practiced over the years, and it's probably had its ebb and flow, but I'm sure there are days where it still feels the same as that very, very first moment of guilt and anguish that happened.
It's grief. You go through the stages of grief. You have to grieve the dream that you had the nerve to think you had control of.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like, once I came to terms with that, and I say it so easily now, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy journey. I would get so angry at hearing my friends celebrate their child's, like, mile markers, and, oh, they're doing this, and, oh, they're doing that. I'm like, you learned how to roll over.
Right.
And nobody would celebrate with me. It was so painful.
I celebrated with you.
You did, but you weren't here.
Right.
I'd have to call you and say, he rolled over.
Right.
And she's like, great. Like, Teresa was my cheerleader. She was always there for me. And I had probably one friend here that did a really good job of trying to be considerate of us and his situation. But it was really hard for other people. Like, we're all 5 of us had babies at the same time, and everybody's talking about what they're doing and where they're going, or they'd make decisions like, oh, well, we didn't invite Alejandro because we didn't think he could do that.
Oh.
And that would just break my heart.
Yeah.
And I always appreciated those families, and I will say they were always families that came from a medical background.
Right.
They're like, hey, we're having this party. We'd like Alejandro to be there. What do we need to do to be able to make it easy? Do we need to have an extra person there? Do you want to bring brother so he can be his person? Like, I love those families who thought outside the box, and they brought to me something I hadn't thought of before for other people. You asked how it was. It was tough. I was a mess. I was on antidepressants probably the first 2 years of his life. And then there was like a Father's Day somewhere in the middle that I realized I wasn't laughing anymore, and I wasn't enjoying this beautiful baby and his siblings and listening. They were just so happy to be with him and interact with him. And I thought, I need to feel this pain. And I started the journey of like learning to sit with my feelings. Teresa's been with me since I was 18. My solution to feelings is to run away. Run away. I don't deal with it. I shove it down, or I run away from it over and over and over again. And at that point, I was like, you can't run from this. This is your life, and this is the life you wanted. Good, bad, or ugly, you need to face it. And that was hard because that's not how I was brought up. We shove feelings down, way down. So to break that mold was hard, and also to be okay with me. It's okay for me to be jealous of my friends. Yeah, that was weird to be like, I can't hang with you today. I'm struggling with this, and not expect them to. Like, I don't expect anything from them. I didn't expect it from them. I didn't want them. I wanted them to understand this isn't them. This is me coping. Right. And I am happy for them, proud of their children, glad for everything they can do. But for me, our path looks different. Yeah. And once I accepted that our path is different, I was like, it's okay. Yeah. One of the things that I struggle with the most is when someone, we're talking about my kiddo, and I'm like, yeah, he's got a wheelchair, and because to me it's just Tuesday. Right. And I mentioned something, and like, oh yeah, I gotta go get this for his chair, or we need to go get that, and they're like, kind of questioning, like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, my son, he's in a wheelchair. That's really all I say nowadays. I don't go into details. I don't talk about spina bifida. A lot of times it's too much for other people, and I just say, my son uses a wheelchair for mobility. Yep. And they say, I'm sorry. I was like, oh, don't be. You don't need to be. We're not. Right. He's not. He chose his chair over walking. He did not want to walk. It was too hard. It was too painful, and it kept requiring more and more surgeries. And he was like, I am done. Aww. I don't want people cutting into me anymore. And I can respect that. Yeah. Absolutely. Some people said we made those decisions too early for him. I've talked to his ortho, who was with him from birth until last year. He was like, that's okay that he called it and that you listened to him, because ultimately he has to live that life and I don't.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I was like, okay, I don't feel guilty about that. So it was a long journey. It was a lot of anger and frustration and asking yourself, why did this happen to me? And really getting to the point of saying, why not me?
Right.
This was my path.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through pain. I've been through suffering. I've had my heart broken. Our first daughter, Teresa is aware of, she passed away. I didn't make it past 22 weeks with her, and it was a late pregnancy, and it was so difficult, and we lost her. I got to hold her, and for a glorious hour and 18 minutes, she was ours.
Right.
And that pain carried with me, resonated with me for so long, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I always ask the question, why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
why?
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah. Why would this happen to me? What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
So when Alejandro came along and going through these feelings and these emotions, and I've always hated the phrase, it happens for a reason. I'm like,
yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that are not watching, she was flipping off the bird a couple of times. So, I am given my past, Teresa's past, we've talked about that in our other podcast. I do not believe things happen for a reason. I don't believe that God, if you believe in him or whatever higher power you believe in, that just points at you and says, I'm going to give you this shit to deal with today.
yeah.
I think we're handed the life we're handed, and it's up to us
to decide how we deal with it.
Decide. Absolutely. It's up to us, and it doesn't, your child didn't get this, so someone else could not get it. I mean, it's the things that happen in life, and we have to deal with them.
And Gina and I mean, we had the conversation. There was a heated night in Phoenix. Gina, do you remember our heated night in Phoenix?
I don't know. Did it have to do with me making milk?
Yes.
I was so proud that I could produce milk.
She was
there
so
you go.
But leading up to that, because she was a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she was a total,
Rightly
complete
so.
wreck. When she called me and said, I'm in Phoenix, I have no idea where I'm at. They want me to go here. Alejandro's in the NICU, and I'm on my way. It was literally, I think, the wee hours of, it was late at night.
Yeah, I had no idea what time it was.
I literally got on the
I didn't know
road.
what I was doing.
I was packed and out the door on my way.
She brought me clothes.
I bought her clothes.
Nice.
And, got settled with her. And it was after his surgery that you ended up in the emergency room, or just, it was
before.
It was the night before.
It's before the family arrived.
Yeah. But, she's a wreck, and I know she's a wreck. And Gina, because I've already, at that point in time, knowing her for so long, is sliding into this, why me, why me, why me? And I'm trying to keep her going. It's like, okay, you need to drink water because you're getting dehydrated. This is Arizona. Blah, blah, blah. We're going through this whole thing. And we had a moment, and then we ended up in the emergency room because I was right. She's dehydrated.
And all these years later, she's still reminding you of
yes,
that, Gina.
I am.
I know, right?
I am. And we are, we get done at the emergency room, and it's an emotional time for her, but it's an emotional time for me too, because this is my friend, and this is a baby, and all this other stuff. And we're back at the Ronald McDonald house. And I'm like, you need to drink. You need to keep drinking. We just got you done. You're going to land back. And she's like, I don't want to. I don't want to. And that's what Gina does when she doesn't want to. I don't want to.
I don't want to.
I don't want to. And I'm like, you need to
put on my diva crown.
And I told her, I go, you need to pump milk for this baby. I don't want to. And she yelled at me. Stop being bossy with me.
Mm-hmm. I know that.
And then she made another comment, which we won't discuss unless she wants to, about, something. But in the moment after she said it, and it's like, look, you made the choice. Mm-hmm. Back in March, when you got the news, you made the choice right then and there that you were going to do this. Like it or not, sister, it's here.
Yep.
And kudos for having a support system that tells you what life is really all about. I've had it.
Yeah.
I've been blessed with some good friends like Teresa and others who have told me, what's going to happen and what's not. So we've talked so much about this beautiful baby and your path. And so I'm going to ask you maybe some questions that I know I want to know. And if you're not comfortable answering them, then please tell me. But I think about, life expectancy and what that means, and is his life going to be shortened because of this disease, and does he have a very bright future, or are there those things, more obstacles of, is he given some crazy diagnosis that he can only live to this age or whatever? So what's that like?
That was, interesting. Someone had asked me that when he made it to early Head Start. One of the teachers in the room had asked me that question one day, and I remember falling apart because it's not something I had ever been asked before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I went to the director. I'm like, she asked me what his life expectancy was.
Right.
Is this something I need to be worried about? Like, I was devastated. And she was like, she meant no ill intent
Right.
on it, and it was just a question. She has had a child. She works with special needs children, and sometimes there are
Mm-hmm.
life expectancies. I was like, that never even crossed my mind. And I love this director. I still love her to this day. She's not in that same role, but she's a big influence in my life at that time. And she was like, just so helpful in helping me understand and realize, like, she's like, you should ask more questions.
Mm-hmm.
You need to ask more questions. And so it was a question we've continued to ask. And pretty much what we have learned is, and this is from our urologist, other physicians may have different things to say. They said that kidney maintenance is the number one thing that used to, before healthcare got good,
Mm-hmm.
that would kill a person who had
Right.
spina bifida. And they said smoking, which I was like, what? Smoking affects the kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be to be concerned about. And it's funny because whenever he goes to his urology appointments, they always like, so, are you smoking? And he's like, not today.
Not today.
Not today. And he goes, I'll let you know when that changes. But they've really helped him understand the science and helped him understand I love his physicians. He's got a great health system behind him. All these different doctors we've pieced together for different parts of his anatomy and his needs, physical, mental, spiritual needs. And they are just so real with him because he is that
awesome.
kind of person. He's going to be 16 this year, and they're just so great at explaining things to him. And he's so great at understanding and asking and just being like cognizant of that he's taking their time and that he's asking good questions, and then he retains them, and then he educates us and anybody else who wants to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So since, the name of our podcast here is called Courage or Crazy, I want to ask you some things about courage and some things about crazy.
Okay.
In all of this, and I mean, I can't even pick one at the courage it takes to get through all of this, but if you had to narrow it down, what do you feel, either from you, from Alejandro, from your husband, from your other kids, what do you think is the most courageous thing that you or any of them have done or he has done for himself to help him deal with all of this, let's call it what it is, all of this shit that's been given to your life that is now your normal, his normal? So if you had to narrow it down to one or possibly two, the most courageous moments that stick out in your head, what would those be?
This was a really hard one. I thought about the question for a long time. And I think because I've never associated my life with courage,
Mm-hmm.
I've just thought, like, we're being fearless and we're just doing the thing.
Right.
We get up every day, we do the thing. And so actually putting the word courageous to it was kind of like, oh, hey, we're doing a thing.
You are doing a thing. You're doing a big
We're doing a
thing.
Oh,
I think something that was a turning point, because I really did kind of feel sorry for myself for a long time. And again, my husband is like, got these wonderful things he says every once in a while. He's a very silent man until he has something important to say or sees something. And I think the most courageous thing that maybe I did as a mother was overcoming the feeling of helplessness, and that we were alone in this journey.
Right.
Like, I always felt like nobody understands because nobody else is doing what I'm doing. And maybe that's, I've come so far from that. And then the not feeling sorry for ourselves. I felt so sorry for us, like, wow, this happened to us. And, and then not allowing others to feel sorry for us. We often, like after he was in the hospital for the wound vacs and going through that whole process in 2020, when I returned back to the office, everybody's like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, I don't know how you wouldn't.
Right.
This is what you do. And I no longer feel sorry for us. This is our life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And if it comes off as courageous, I'm happy for that. But I think also it gave me the strength to stop comparing myself to other people.
Right.
Stop comparing myself, stop comparing our lives. And I've done that with my children, and I've done that with Alejandro. And I think that may be the greatest thing that we've given him, is that, yeah, your life looks different from other people, but it doesn't make it any better or any worse than theirs.
Right.
It's what you put into it that's going to determine how your life is. And that took, from birth until who knows when.
Well, and that is the whole picture. And I don't know if Teresa shared with you some of, our conversations or not, and I'm an open book, so she is more than welcome to do that. But I always use a phrase, and it's helped me get through a lot in my life. But I always say love conquers all. And I've listened to you for, I don't know, now going on an hour. And, and the number one thing I pick out of there is, yes, there's a lot of courage that you guys have all faced. Your whole family has faced. And quite honestly, probably all of his care team has faced. They've overcome that courageousness, and they've, dug down deep and battled whatever they needed to in order to help him and help you as a family. And so love is the predominant thing that I see. The love your husband had for you to help you in the way he did, the love you have for your other children, and the love you quite honestly had for him, because you were given some bad news and could have made a different choice. Oh, yeah. You could have made a different choice.
That was the crazy thing. Even at 32 weeks, they were like, we can take care. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I have been waiting too long for this child.
Right.
And like I said, it was a difficult pregnancy, and me saying, no, this kid is coming. Come hello, high water.
Exactly.
This kid is coming.
Exactly. Love does conquer all of that. So we cannot do courage and we cannot do love without throwing in some crazy.
Oh,
so, holy moly. Between the stories of you and Teresa and the stories of the crazy things that have happened in your journey along the way, is there one thing that pops out in your head as the craziest thing that has happened in this journey so far? So we're not to assume that nothing crazy is going to happen as we move even forward in this.
Yeah. What's the craziest, Gina?
I don't know. That's a really hard question. I guess, I don't know. There's just so much.
I think
Mom learned how to ski so that she could ski with him, and not my favoriteest thing.
My favorite story was when he was much younger and having to take his wheelchair away from him.
Oh yeah,
because he would use it as a weapon when he was mad.
All right, a wheelchair is a weapon. Now that's
when he was little, he went through a Fast and Furious stage,
Yes.
and he had his daycare while they were mopping the floor. He had them slick it down so he could race around it, so he could Tokyo drift.
Yes.
And so they have this video of him just like going around and around the table and drifting with his wheelchair.
That's awesome.
Like, I think the craziest was today, and Gina literally, she goes, "What do I do with a toddler who rams his wheelchair into me when he's in trouble?" And I'm just saying to myself, this is not
a normal conversation.
This is
with
not
the
a
mom
normal
of a toddler.
conversation that I would have
Yep.
Right.
with any of my friends when my children were young. But yet, with my friend Gina, this is normal conversation. You have a
Normal
young one
conversation.
who is using a wheelchair as a ramming device because he's mad at mom. So what?
Funny. I'm sure as we look through your journey, there's probably a lot of crazy. So I have two final questions for you, and I know the first of these two is going to be kind of hard for you to answer in a condensed format.
Yeah.
But let's do our best at it. If you had a piece of advice to share with another family facing the same decision, facing life with a child with spina bifida, what words of encouragement, what words of advice, what are some of the things that you would say to them?
First off, don't scroll the internet. You are not Dr. Google.
That's a good one.
And find your resources. Find your people don't like the word help. They don't like to hear go ask for help. So I tell people, look for your resources. I'm someone who, during his times at Early Head Start, became an advocate for other families. And all they really had me do was just talk to other families going through children's having birth defects or being born prematurely. And a few times I've talked to other families that have had children with spina bifida. And really, the advice I give them is know your child. Only you know what's best for them, and only you can determine what kind of care or what direction you want to go. Don't let the physicians and the doctors and the authority, the people who know things tell you what to do. They don't know your child the way you know. You are, from the moment that child is born and brought into this world, you are their advocate, and you need to be there for them. You need to be brave. You need to have courage to tell people when. I learned a little bit of this from when Teresa was there at the NICU with me, and they really wanted me to pump. They really wanted me to breastfeed. And like I said, I wasn't in the right mindset, and they were really rude to me. And I wasn't advocating for myself at all.
That's okay. I'll take care of that
one. I was
one.
just taking it. And Teresa, got in my face and said, stop letting people tell you what to do. You're not this person. And I said, I am too tired. And she's like, you got a long journey ahead of you. You need to do this. And so she snapped at them, got them to back off. And she was like, when she says no, she means no, back off. And so they left me alone. And then when she wasn't there, they became more like, they were like, is she going to really tell us anything? And I was like, I'm not doing this right now. We didn't get the chance, at the beginning to do the nursing and the bonding and all that. So it wasn't working. And when he did latch on, it was the worst feeling in the world to me. And so I was like, I will gladly pump for 6 months if I have to, but I am not latching on again. And they weren't happy about that. But that was my decision. And finally I was able to vocalize it. And just that, I know there was more conversation that me and Teresa had, but she's like, you need to tell them what you want and what you're willing to do. And that's been my overwhelming advice I showed for all other families that I talk to. You are their advocate. If you feel something, if you think your kid is struggling at school, you need to say something. Stop listening to that person who goes, it's just their behavior. If you at your core think there is something more, you need to listen to that, because that's why you're that child's parent. Because you feel those things. So advocate and use your resources, and don't be embarrassed. That's what they were created for.
Right.
If there's a center that deals with this type of behavior or that kind of care, use it. That's what they are created for. So
Absolutely.
that is like my biggest piece of advice.
That's
advocate.
I mean, that's a great piece of advice for every parent.
Definitely.
No matter healthy children or not, advocate for them. So, as we're wrapping up, first off, I want to thank you so much. I know sharing some of the details is not always the easiest thing, but I do believe someone out there needs to hear it. And you've probably made a huge difference in someone's, if not many, people's minds and in their hearts. So the last question I have for you, given all that you've been through, do you believe it takes a whole lot of courage to get through life and a whole lot of crazy to survive it?
I do.
Good answer.
I would say, and a lot of laughter and sarcasm.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So I know we've left out so much stuff in this long journey and so many things that I know we do. Teresa's going to wrap us up here in a couple of minutes, and we do want people to reach out, and I hope that you are willing to maybe accept a phone call from Teresa or email if one of our listeners has questions or just needs a little bit of piece of advice. We'll try not to bug you too much, but I hope you're willing to at least engage a little bit or help us engage with our listeners if they do call and ask questions. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. I kind of sat in this chair and almost felt like I was living this journey with you. And so I'm kind of wore out and I'm kind of on the verge of tears.
I have tissues.
So do we.
Yeah, so do I.
We have tons here.
So I can't, I've seen pictures and I just, losing children like Teresa and I have, people always say to us, and you, yes, you're in that mix with us, and I know you've heard it. I can't imagine. And we truly, the three of us, along with many, many other people out there, we truly live the unimaginable life. And it takes a whole lot of courage, but man, I'm glad to throw in some crazy to help us get through it.
Definitely.
So, Teresa, if you will say a few finishing words to your friends.
A few finishing words. Gina, thank you so much for doing this and being with us today. I am going to see maybe if I can get Gina to maybe further the story, maybe break it down. Maybe do a series of writing things for us.
Oh, how about some blogs?
I know, maybe some blogs that go a little more.
We're calling you out on air.
I know, right?
We put you on the spot.
So now I know why you said yes to, like, I love writing.
Right?
Oh, really?
Now you know. I did have the thought that, because it's hard. I mean, this has been, Alejandro is how old now?
He is 15. He'll be 16 in May.
Almost 16 years. Wow, 16.
Yeah, hard to condense that into an hour's worth of
Hard
stories,
to condense it into, I mean, we just did it and we put ours in 30-minute format, and we both know how hard that was. So, but anyway, Gina, I thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, yet again, more tears, sharing them with me and my friend Cheryl. And thank you to all the listeners who have, if you've listened to both parts of this, if you have any questions, leave us comments, send us emails. More than willing to interact with anybody and answer any questions that we can. I'm also going to say, if you haven't listened to part 1, go back and listen to part 1. That's where you should start at. Part 1, then part 2, or you're going to be lost.
Exactly.
Bring your tissues.
Bring your tissues. And we appreciate everyone who listens to us and joins us on a weekly basis and on this journey of courage and crazy. And I can't do this exit as eloquently as Trapper does, but
he's buried in the snow.
But he's buried in the snow in northern Arizona with no cell phone service, I think.
All I got to say is better him.
I know, definitely us. Better him than us. So
sorry, Trapper.
We greatly appreciate each and every one of you that joins us, and we look forward to spending more time with you again in our next podcast. Thank you very much.